because pairing up with Trae Young does excite me.
Life is full of choices, and at H&R Block, they know the best lived lives can't be boxed in. That's why they use their 70 years of expertise to make your money work for what matters to you, for life outside the box. Learn more at hrblock.com today.
We are on Sportsmanlike here on ESPN Radio. ESPN2, we are live in San Francisco. Coverage of the big game brought to you by SoFi. Yesterday, tons of trades in the NBA. Today is the trade deadline. A 4-hour NBA Today special with Malik Andrews and company on ESPN television. You think I may pay attention to that? Anyway, so a trade that came down as a shocker yesterday that none of us saw coming the way in which it went down was that Anthony Davis got traded in a huge deal from the Dallas Mavericks to the Washington Wizards, because that is what we all saw happening.
So crazy.
Now, quick little note, because I do think this is important to discuss. What you're seeing is a trend in the NBA of these teams that have been, over the last 5 to 10 years, not very good, do what Bobby Marks, our front office insider, and Brian Windhorst have called pre-agency. Get a guy before he becomes a free agent, so you have the best chance of giving him a big deal with your team, a team that more likely than not he wouldn't have signed with otherwise. So the Wizards have done it twice this year. They did it with Trae Young, and they've now done it with Anthony Davis. The Utah Jazz did it the other day with Jaren Jackson Jr. Okay, so there's your kind of basketball take from this. What's the bigger thing that everyone is talking about is whether or not this officially makes the Luka trade the worst trade in the history of sports. Because ultimately, what the Dallas Mavericks have now received for Luka is Max Christie, Chris Middleton, who was once great, A.J. Johnson, Malachi Brown, Marvin Bagley III, a 29 Lakers first, a 26 Oklahoma City first. That's this year. Breaking news, they're good. And a Golden State Warriors first in 2030, which is a top 20 protected pick, and 3 second-rounders. When you hear this, basically average, everyday, great fan of unsportsmanlike out there probably says, I think I've heard of Chris Middleton. And that's the extent of this, CC. That's where this ends for a generational player in Luka. Do we now have to look at this and say it's the worst trade ever?
It's bad. It's bad. Now, listen, the Mavs got lucky. They won the lottery, and they got Cooper Flagg. So the hardest part of trying to build a winner is figuring out the young player to build around. They seemingly have that now. But I just think about how much that timeline could have been accelerated in terms of putting the pieces to accentuate Cooper Flagg's ability around him if you would have gotten more from the Luka Doncic trade. And so, yeah, there has to be some soul searching when it comes to upper management in Dallas. They scapegoated Nico Harrison. He's now out of the building. They can't hold his feet to the fire for this little of a return on Anthony Davis. And the only thing that I can think of, because they got so little in return for him, is that they weren't able to shop Anthony Davis to a team that was willing to take the risk of what AD's future looks like in terms of his ability to be able to stay healthy. You're talking about a guy that hasn't played over 60 games each of the last 2 years, has had some serious health concerns this year, hasn't been trending in the right direction. So I think that is the biggest thing that has affected his trade value. And as crazy as this sounds, the Dallas Mavericks have a guy in Anthony Davis, one of the best big men in all of basketball when he's healthy. They found a way to devalue him by mismanaging what he's been dealing with injuries over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, this is bad. This is really bad. And I think it might be worse than the Deshaun Watson deal, because even though the Houston Texans obviously completely revamped their franchise and went from a team that was probably always on your hot mess rankings, Evan, to a perennial playoff team and a team that we feel like could contend for a while. But the fact that you go out there and you make the Luka trade, and less than a year later, the guy that you allowed to upend your franchise and Nico Harrison is gone. And now you're still in a position, even though you have Cooper Flagg and you're pivoting that way, where you're feeling the ramifications of that deal. And you didn't even give it over a year to bake. Pretty bad.
Yeah. I think that Nico Harrison was horrible, but he's not allowed to make a trade without permission. Like governorship signed off on this. Bad ideas are encouraged at most good companies. Bad ideas turned into bad execution are the fault of those that are highest ranking, right? So, like, it's not only Nico Harrison, because what has happened since they fired him, it's everyone else that has been a part of this, that has been awful in the way that they've done it. And interestingly enough, I actually thought it got to a point where you should not trade Anthony Davis, and that you should actually look at it and say Cooper Flagg is in his rookie year, but he may be 1 to 2 years ahead of schedule. And that maybe you should just say trade the ancillary pieces, keep AD, don't extend, keep Irving, don't extend, keep Flagg, extend when it's necessary, and then build those three and then the ancillary pieces around them. If I'm not mistaken, I saw yesterday that Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis played 25 minutes together.
Oh, my God.
Not in a game, total.
Cumulative.
And inevitably, what's going to happen, if you've paid attention to this sport, is Kyrie's going to ask out. Kyrie's ultimately good. Like, Kyrie is not – ultimately, I bet you he asks out too. And so this is only going to get worse, and he does not have value around the league by way of a trade. In terms of some of the worst trades, the Watson trade was horrible. You mentioned that. The Herschel Walker trade is known as obviously like one of the worst trades we've ever seen in NBA, in NFL history, in sports history. Babe Ruth to the Yankees, it's tricky because it wasn't like a true trade, right? Like it wasn't like a player for player. He was basically, his rights were sold. But in terms of basketball, this is probably the worst trade we've ever seen. You know, Kobe, may he rest in peace, was traded from the Hornets to the Lakers for Vlade. But that was like Kobe said, I want to play for this team. Is there a way? So it's not – you almost can't compare. See, when I'm thinking about some of the horrible trades that are made, I don't even have one that is comparable to this.
I mean, Milwaukee trading Kareem.
But he asked out. Let's do it this way. I don't have one that's comparable.
I don't either.
I don't either.
Yeah, because Anthony Davis didn't want to leave, and neither did Luka.
Yeah, Luka definitely. Luka was
neither one of them wanted to leave where they were at.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild what has happened here, and I just think that while Nico Harrison deserves a ton of blame, someone had to sign off on it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Brent, would we look at this? Had Kyrie not torn his ACL? That's the part. Like, I mean, we always, imagine what could have been if injuries don't happen in sports. If that Kyrie injury didn't happen, theoretically that Mavs window would have been there, but it did. And it happened because of a lack of depth. And now you're in a position where your franchise is starting over and you've got a blue-chip player in Cooper Flagg to build around, but there's not much else, and you're not getting the return when it comes to the assets that you do ship off to other places around the league. So that's got to be a little bit disappointing, disheartening if you're a Mavs fan.
Yeah, I want everyone to listen to the next message that CC has for everybody, but Granger is for the ones who get it done. So Dallas Mavericks, I'm not sure you should listen to this because I'm not sure you're getting it done. I got to be honest with you.
Shout out to the Washington Wizards for getting it done and getting pace car for Alex Sarr. Their super talented young big man, 17.